morning. It is Wednesday, the 18th of February. I'm Maeve McMahon, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of European news and analysis, live here on Euronews. Coming up, another day, another attempt to end the war in Ukraine, this time in Geneva. Delegations from Moscow and Kiev are gathering in the Swiss city for their second day of, quote, tense US-brokered talks, with neither side willing to budge on key issues from territory to security guarantees. The US-imposed June deadline for settlement looks increasingly unlikely. Despite the negotiations, Russia continues to launch long-range drones and missiles across Ukraine. For more, our Ukraine correspondent, Sasha Vakalina, joins me now in the studio. Sasha, good morning.
Morning.
So look, yesterday we saw 6 hours of tense talks, more today, but no expectations of any sort of breakthrough.
Now, the sides also spoke a little bit about what happened there in Geneva yesterday. We heard from the US envoy Steve Witkoff. He said that there was meaningful progress made at the first day of the negotiations. We also heard from the Ukrainian delegation, specifically from Rustem Umerov, who is the head of the delegation and also the secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council. Now, Rustem Umerov also praised the first day of the talks. He said that the discussions focused on practical issues and the mechanisms of possible solutions. Tomorrow morning, the political and military groups will continue to work. There we go. There are two tracks, the political one and the military one. Now, the Russian side seems to be more skeptical about it. Reportedly, there were some arguments and some situations where the dialogue got stuck. Well, this is, of course, also due to the fact that Moscow changed the head of the delegation. It's now represented by Vladimir Medinsky, who is one of the hardliners and one of the biggest supporters of Russia's all-out war against Ukraine.
And meanwhile, Sasha, just tell us what's happening on the ground in Ukraine.
Ukraine is actually coming to the Geneva negotiations in a different position. Ukrainian forces have been making some progress and have been successfully going on counter-attacks, specifically in southeastern Ukraine, around 80 kilometers east of Zaporizhzhia city. And that was largely thanks to the fact that SpaceX and Elon Musk managed to block the access to Starlink terminals, unauthorized Starlink terminals for Russian forces. Now, Elon Musk said himself numerous times that he's not cooperating and not doing any business with Russian government or Russian military. And the moment they stopped the access, we could see the difference on the battleground, Maeve.
Okay, Sasha Vakalina, our Ukraine correspondent, thank you so much for all those updates. But now, coming up, we'll be joined by the US ambassador to the European Union, Andrew Puster, an attorney and businessman by trade. Andrew Puster ran a successful fast food chain before taking on the role of President Trump's eyes and ears right here in Brussels. So the ambassador has a very busy schedule. Ambassador, great to have you with us. Welcome back to Europe Today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Maeve. Thanks for having me back.
As I said, it's busy days for you. You're just back from the Munich Security Conference.
Yes.
I feel the atmosphere was a little bit better, a little bit nicer than last year, right, between the Europeans and the Americans. Did you get that feeling?
Yes, everybody was very positive about Secretary Rubio's speech, and I think it's the hallmark of a diplomat to be able to tell people things they need to hear and may not want to hear in a way they find acceptable. And I thought the European audience was very open to him and obviously got a standing ovation, so he did pretty well.
Despite the fact that the fundamentals have not changed. I mean, his speech did say that the US is worried about European civilization. What is wrong with European civilization?
Well, I think the problem is that with immigration, the impact of immigration on Europe, mass immigration, the impact of the climate policies on the economy, and on GDP per capita, on the ability of people to really...
But there is no mass immigration right now. The numbers have gone down. If you take a look at Frontex, the numbers have gone down of irregular migration, and now the EU is taking a tougher stance on asylum seekers, for example.
I think it is. I actually think the EU's position on immigration has come a great distance towards the American position. I think we're more aligned than we were even just a year ago. But I think what Secretary Rubio was talking about was the impact of the past migration, the past mass migration, and the challenge, the civilizational challenge that posed.
But what are the
and
facts
it's still
on
something
this?
That's still something that's cleaning
up. What are the
up.
facts on this?
Which facts?
What are the facts? What is he worried about?
He's worried about the impact on issues such as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, from groups of people coming in that may not share our values as Western civilization. They have different values, not that they're right or wrong, but they're different than ours. And that would be a challenge to our our Western civilization and our ability to get
The
along.
EU needs managed migration because, unemployment is quite low right now. There's a major gap.
There's a difference between managed migration and mass migration. And I think what we've seen over the past decade is just flows of people coming in onto the continent. And the reaction has not been positive. I think that you saw...
Well, we do not have flows if you check the statistics. But let's just go back to Kaja Kallas' speech.
You've seen rise of parties on the right based on the immigration issue. So there is concern in Europe.
But whether or not they're based on facts, they're arguments. I mean, they're superstars on social media. Let's just go back to Kaja Kallas'...
It's what the people are voting for.
Let's go back to Kaja Kallas' speech last week in Munich. She said that there's no European erasure. She said that the United States perhaps shouldn't be preaching to the Europeans given the state of press freedom in the United States. Do you not see why she's getting upset?
No, I don't. Matter of fact, I'm not sure why she is upset. She's always been very supportive of the United States. She's always been very anti-Russia. I know that that's based on her Estonian roots and her personal history, but look, I think it's important that we address the issues of free speech. I think it's important that we address the issues of immigration. I think it's important that we address the issues of overregulation that's destroying the economies across Europe. And you just listen to Chancellor Merz or to Bart de Wever, Prime Minister de Wever.
And that issue is being addressed. We saw the Leaders' Summit there last week.
So I think he agrees. I think he's saying this is that we need to address these issues, and they're being raised. Let's say I don't know that they're being addressed yet. We're making Europe is making
it takes
an
time.
effort to it.
27 democracies working together. Just back to Marco Rubio's idea at the Munich Security Council, this idea of a political alignment between the EU and the United States. But how do you know that you'll make sure to get this if you're so mean to your allies, if you're saying such nasty things all the time?
Well, I didn't think Rubio's speech was mean at all. I thought Secretary Rubio was very diplomatic. I think that he was interrupted 3 times by applause and got a standing ovation at the end, so it couldn't have been too insulting. I thought he did a great job. I think when he talked about how tied we are, how the World War I, World War II demonstrated that we are inextricably linked. That we come from Europe. There's a real bond here, and I think he did everything he could to emphasize that.
So why doesn't he come to Brussels? Why is he not visiting Brussels? He's over in Budapest now, showing his support to one head of state who's posing now for elections, to Viktor Orban.
Well, these Hungary and Slovakia, there's nothing wrong with him visiting those countries. I'm not sure why he didn't visit Brussels this trip. I'm sure he will visit Brussels at some point.
Because the Europeans feel snubbed.
Well, I can't answer that. I don't know why they would feel snubbed. They shouldn't feel snubbed. He's got a lot to do as Secretary of State, and I'm sure he's out there trying to meet the demands. When he gets to these events, I don't know if you've ever seen Secretary Rubio at these events, but he's treated like a rock star. I mean, everybody wants to meet with him.
Well, that's why we'd love to welcome him here in Brussels.
I'd love him to come. There's an open invitation.
But is that not political interference, the fact that he's in Budapest right now, just ahead of a huge election?
I think he has every right to visit Budapest. I mean, Hungary is an ally of the United States. It's a member of the European Union. It's not like he's, going and visiting countries that aren't affiliated with the EU. He's visiting EU member states, and I really don't see a problem with that.
But Europeans are feeling a little bit upset as well about the mantra coming out of Washington right now. Did you see J.D. Vance? He got booed at the Winter Olympics ceremony.
I didn't. I read different accounts of what happened when he walked out there. I know that he's not particularly popular because he raised some issues last time that when he spoke at the Munich Security Conference. And it's Europe. There was one group at the where I heard some talk at the Munich conference, where they were saying Europe was like somebody who was asleep and had a snooze button on the alarm clock. Did you hear that?
I've heard that many times.
It's time to get up and they hit the snooze button. Well, when J.D. Vance and President Trump came along, it was time to stop hitting the snooze button on things like a 5%. You've got to defend yourself, the 5% of GDP commitment. There are issues that they've raised in a way that had to wake Europe up. And J.D. Vance is a very good guy. If you interviewed him, you'd like him very much.
Well, hopefully I'll get to interview him sometime here on Europe Today. But in the meantime, Ambassador, the Greenland issue seems put to bed for now.
Yes.
But should we expect more tariff threats coming from DC soon? Because that really scared Europeans.
I think that what we should expect is that we'll have a free trade agreement, the framework trade agreement will be approved by Parliament, hopefully, the week of March 9th. Then we'll have a trilogue, or we call it the United States reconciliation, where we'll come up with a final bill, and we'll have the critical minerals deal, we'll have the trade agreement. We'll start moving forward. I think it's really time that we stop talking at each other and start speaking with each other. And I think both of these agreements, critical minerals and free trade, can get us on a path to doing that. I think when we come to an agreement on Greenland, I think that will move things forward. But we need to get a more conciliatory approach to how we're dealing with issues. And I think as we do that going forward, we'll find fewer and fewer of these disruptions.
Okay. In the meantime, Ambassador Pothier, thank you so much for being our guest once again here on Europe Today.
Thanks, Maeve. My pleasure.
Hope to see you back on here again soon. But moving on, Brussels has launched a formal probe into the Chinese retailer Shein. According to the EU Commission, there is sufficient evidence that clothes, cosmetics and electronics are not compliant with EU law. Jakob Janis has more on the platform that records 145 million monthly European users.
Everyone loves a good bargain, but what if your €3 t-shirt comes with an extra baggage? It all started last year with a massive scandal in France. Authorities found illegal products, including a childlike sex doll being sold on Shein. And now the EU is stepping in. The European Commission has just launched a formal priority investigation into the e-commerce giant under the Digital Services Act. Interested? Let's unbox it together. Brussels is targeting Shein's entire business model, and they are investigating its addictive design, like giving users points and rewards to keep them hooked, and demanding transparency on their secret algorithms pushing these products. And if Shein is found guilty, it faces multi-million euro fines. France even threatened to suspend access to the site entirely. But the crackdown doesn't stop there. Consumer watchdogs are raising the alarm on influencers pushing cheap haul and dupe videos on social media without disclosing their paid partnerships. Finally, the EU is hitting these companies where it hurts, and it is your wallet. Starting in July this year, the EU is slapping a flat €3 customs tax on every single parcel under 150 euros. With an estimated 12 million cheap packages entering the EU every single day, the days of tax-free shopping sprees on Chinese online marketplaces are officially numbered. And since the Chinese New Year just kicked off, Happy New Year to the e-commerce giants! The EU just opened a massive investigation, and unfortunately, this is a gift you cannot return.
Jakob Janis there reporting on a probe that could take years to carry out and see Shein fined 6% of its annual turnover. But now, moving on to one of Europe's most closely watched election races of the year, to Hungary. Incumbent Prime Minister Viktor Orban and TSAS's Peter Mayer have both launched their campaigns, one clearly in favour of Brussels and the other against. For the first time since 2010, a change of government appears possible. For more, Sándor Zsiros, our Hungarian correspondent, is in the studio. So Sándor, last week we talked about those dirty scandals in the campaign. Where are we now?
Good morning, Maeve. Indeed, there are indicators that Peter Magyar's so-called sex tape blackmailing scandal could move forward and some sensitive information could be released soon. Before I go to the details, let me give you a background. So, last week Peter Magyar said he has been lured into a sex act in a Budapest apartment with his former girlfriend, and according to him, a sex tape had been illegally recorded. Peter Magyar also said that there have been drugs in this apartment, but he never touched them. And last week there was a very mysterious web page posting one image of this bedroom, of this apartment. Peter Magyar admitted that he has been there, so the picture is real. And now, yesterday, this web page quoted Peter Magyar that he never touched drugs in this apartment, and this webpage posted one question: "Are you sure?" quotation. So this might be an implication that, a possible video related to a possible drug use could come soon. Nevertheless, Peter Magyar is denying this.
So the plot is thickening there. How will this impact the campaign?
It's too early to say. We haven't seen the video. We don't know about the content. But, drug use is illegal in Hungary, and we have a lot of conservative voters, and everyone is fighting for the undecided voters right now in Hungary. But nevertheless, Peter Magyar is like, for me, he's a little bit like Donald Trump. There is a lot of attacks, a lot of campaigns against him, but everything you throw at him, he just brushes off from himself and he moves on, a little bit like Donald Trump did in the past. And so far, he is unharmed. But this scandal could be different depending on what will happen. I mean, and the elections are getting closer and closer, so we will see much more tensions coming in this election.
And it's worth pointing out to our viewers, Sándor, that Peter Magyar is a former close friend of Viktor Orban and a former member of Fidesz, the party of Viktor Orban. So, Sándor, thank you so much for bringing us all those details. We'll keep, of course, a very close eye on that campaign. But now, coming up, we'll be joined by Seamus Boland, the new president of the EU's Economic and Social Committee, an EU body that came about in the 50s to give a voice to civil society in shaping EU legislation. Good morning, President Boland. So look, 100 days into your new job, do you really feel that you're shaping EU legislation? It's a very pro-business agenda now.
Absolutely, but I really do. I think I'm into the issues very much at the heart of what I'm talking about are the eradication of poverty. There's a lot of problems with housing. People can't get houses anymore. People are feeling the brunt of energy and the cost of it. Bringing civil society at the heart of Europe. These are the organisations, the ordinary organisations that really are at the forefront of disaster zones, etc. They need to be at the centre.
But what can the EU really do about housing?
Well, the EU, in fairness to President Costa, I met him in the early days and I've been talking to the Commissioner Jorgensen as well. I think they have to make a very clear statement that housing is urgent, that it's not something to be solved in a couple of days. It has to be done, but it has to be done now. It has to be brought to the forefront. And EU countries, 27, you mentioned it earlier on in the show, 27 individual countries need to also take it urgently, but the EU needs to take the lead.
Well, there's a sense of urgency in the room among EU leaders, perhaps not about housing, but about other issues related to the economy. We saw that leaders' retreat last Thursday, this idea of a pragmatic federalism, a multi-speed Europe. What is your view on this?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of talking to President Costa before that leaders' retreat, and clearly it was about competitiveness. Yes, you said a pro-business world, but competitiveness with values. Europe is built on values. You said 27 countries trying to make their way in the world, trying to ensure that nobody is left behind. So my way of looking at it is we have to be competitive. We have to worry about security, but we better make sure we don't leave people behind, and that means keeping the values that we were built upon alive.
And who should pay for this? I mean, we heard Mario Draghi mention 800 billion euro gap there.
Here's the thing. We're talking about billions of euro. We have to accept that those billions cannot be taken out of the current budget, because if we do, we're going to make people very, very poor, very poor. So we've got options. We've got to either borrow more, and we can, because Europe has room. We can raise money, of course, from the individual countries' subscriptions, or we can find other financial tools. But we cannot impoverish people by putting all this money up front and taking it out of their pockets. That can't happen. So we've got to think new ideas, and I hope that leaders' retreat did that.
And do you think that people in the room are thinking like you?
I'd like to think so. I mean, I've met something like 11 commissioners at the moment. I've met countless MEPs, chairs of the committees in the Parliament, and lots of people in what's called the power room, let's call it that. And all I can say is, yes, they are listening, and they know, because if they leave people behind, they may not be in office.
OK. Seamus Boland, the President of the Economic and Social Committee, thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Europe Today. And thank you so much for tuning in. As always, any comments or questions that you have for us, you can always write us at europetoday@euronews.com. And for more news and analysis, check out our website, euronews.com. Take care. Thanks for watching, and see you soon on Euronews.
Decision-making is crucial in businesses.
That cloud spending will surpass the $1 trillion mark in Europe.